You're listening to Signals from the Core, a podcast about adventuring in the core sector of the Mongoose Traveller 2nd Edition role-playing game. This is where the bureaucracy is dangerous, the nobles are lethal, and where power, paranoia, and prestige collide. I'm Captain Aurelius, and I'll be your host. In each episode, we explore the tangled heart of the Third Imperium through original story hooks, people of interest, encounters, locations, and the tools you need to bring high-stakes, low-trust campaigns to life. If your crew is headed for the throne world, buckle up, because here in the core, secrets don't stay buried. Not for long. Welcome back to the show, everybody, and thanks for being here. And thank you, too, to everyone who took a moment to welcome me back and send me such encouraging thoughts and sentiments. I truly appreciate you, and it's good to be back. Well, travelers, it's been a seemingly busy time over at Mongoose, as in the last few weeks, they've released an updated vehicle handbook, the Core Expeditions book that takes players on 8 loosely related Jodani expeditions into the core, galactic core, though, not to be confused with the core sector this podcast concerns itself with. And they also put out 2 new books supplementing the 5th Frontier War line, Brushfires and the Consular Envoy book as well. Those are all available on pre-order, which means I think you can get the PDFs. I haven't picked them up yet. They're all sitting in my cart, just waiting for me to hit purchase. So that is very exciting. If you're a fan of Mongoose like I am, and you're a fan, I mean, obviously, I feel like the vehicle handbook is a must have. I'm kind of on the fence about whether or not I want the hard copies of the Core Expeditions. I will probably get the hard copies of the 5th Frontier War 2 books because I have all the other ones. And if you're a fan of the 5th Frontier War line, then, I don't know. Being a completionist, I'm probably going to pick them up because that's just the way I am. But anyway, a little bit of a digression. I just wanted to give Mongoose props there for a pretty prolific last few weeks. But mainly this week, we're talking another Mongoose milestone. We got word the other day, as I record this on a Sunday. Hopefully we'll even release the episode Monday morning. But just earlier this week, I think April 8th, we got word that the Singularity campaign is off to the printers. Now, the Singularity campaign is it's going to be a slipcase, 3 acts plus a source book and a companion for a certain backer level. We'll get into all that. And the final PDFs were also released to backers on Drive-Thru RPG. So if you're anything like me, you've been looking forward to this one for a really long time. And today, we're going to be doing a detailed look at some exciting elements of this campaign that make for amazing emergent storytelling opportunities for gameplay in the core sector. As I mentioned previously, I love running games where emergent storytelling opportunities happen. So while I like campaigns that are kind of set and you're following a plot and there's, a boss and known enemies and you've kind of got a point that you're trying to do and dealing with objectives and all of that. I also like that kind of old school role-playing style where you kind of let random circumstances happen and let the storyline sort of emerge from that and see what sort of comes of it. So as I was reading through and have been reading through the Singularity campaign materials, particularly a couple of books that we'll get into today, there are a lot of sandbox opportunities for role-playing adventure in this core sector of the Third Imperium, and that to me is exciting. Singularity was written by Christopher Griffen, who also wrote the indispensable Third Imperium Sourcebook, as well as 3 traveler adventures set in the core. Last Call at Aries Cantina, Invasive Species, and Errant Lighting, which I need to get around to reviewing here on the podcast at some point too. But point being, Chris Griffen is no stranger to the core, has brought a lot to it, is probably my favorite author, writer in the Traveller, Mongoose Traveller line. I just really, really enjoy his stuff. I enjoy everything he has done and contributed to the core sector, which obviously is near and dear to my heart as a setting, which is why this show exists. So really, really looking forward to diving into this campaign with you. But before we jump in, if you ever want to let me know what's on your mind, share your ideas or thoughts on the show, send your signals to coresignalsmail@gmail.com or follow along on Blue Sky. There's a new account there to just follow the show. If you don't want to hear me ramble or post about whatever's on my mind, you can follow just the show on Blue Sky at signalsfromthecore.bsky.social. Rolls right off the tongue. You can also find these links in the show notes, obviously. And I also set up a new link tree, which I will also drop in the show notes as well. So you can find me wherever I am and find the show really easily. So go check out the show notes. You don't have to remember these addresses from me saying them here on the show. If you like the show, please remember to rate and review it on Apple Podcasts and Spotify especially. Really helps give the show a signal boost, and you'd really be helping me out. I mean, I think it's cliche to say now. It's probably it's like white noise because everybody says it at the top of at their podcast, but we wouldn't say it if it wasn't true, and it's so very true. Really helps the show when you rate, review, like, share, all of that stuff. Help spread the word. All right. Without further ado, let's dive in. It is the golden age of the Third Imperium, and the next great age of advancement is upon us. But all is not well. The year is 1105, the golden age of the Third Imperium. Commerce flows between worlds. There is peace on all fronts, and the realm looks to expand at its burgeoning frontier. However, despite appearances, all is not well. The vast interstellar territory has become unmanageable. Separatists sow unrest from within, and external enemies surround it on all sides. Conspiracies are brewing that will bring the entire empire to its knees. Imagine the opportunity to change it all falls right into your lap. The travelers are given the means to alter the course of history and redirect the momentum of a 1,000-year empire. Technology is at the core of this campaign, and the next great age of advancement lies before the travelers. That's from the official Kickstarter of this campaign from last year. Singularity is a major 3-part campaign that thrusts its players into the heart of intrigue and looming transformation that focuses on the sudden destabilizing emergence of advanced artificial intelligence. As peace reigns in the Golden Age, cracks run beneath the surface of the Great Empire, as we just mentioned. Political unrest, conspiracies, and secrets that threaten the stability of worlds, if not the entire realm itself. These are elements we've talked about on Signals from the Core since episode 1. Remember what I said then. We're in a dangerous time, on the brink of the Fifth Frontier War erupting in the Spinward Marches, while tensions with the Soleimani Confederation are quietly building. It's a distracted Imperium, a place where corruption is finding space to breathe, where paranoia is rising, and where the underworld is slowly gaining a foothold. Amidst these tensions, a discovery promises to shake the very bedrock of civilization. A technologically advanced sentient force, possibly benevolent, previously unfathomable, warns of a coming crisis that could redefine human existence. The adventure begins with a deceptively simple job. The travelers are hired to crew a magnificent, custom-built luxury liner known as the Ventura Fortuna. Their patron is an eccentric noble who wants them to take the wealthy, powerful, and famous on extravagant tours of the core sector, where travelers will rub elbows with power brokers and get involved in their intrigues as they journey along 4 unique cruise routes, exploring the sector and spoiling the passengers with every luxury imaginable. However, not everything is as it seems. The first volume, Act 1, Cylean Dream, is a slow burn mystery. The more you get to know the ship, the more you discover it has a mind of its own. Small clues and strange happenings hint at a deeper purpose, a secret mission that a conscious intelligence has planned. Act 1 also includes a set of voyages and adventures called Departures, meant to get the travelers exploring and getting to know the Imperium. The act culminates in a wild turn of events that reveals the nature of the mission and setting the stage for what comes next. The tension ramps up in Act 2, Renegade Minds, where the campaign transforms from a mystery to high-stakes mission to create an interstellar utopia, a place where people can thrive free from political strife and societal collapse. With their patrons' true intentions known, the travelers have a major decision point. Will they side with Nilir and become agents of change, or stand against it and try to preserve the status quo? To achieve their goals, travelers are sent on a series of adventures unlike any they've experienced before, certainly unlike anything in Traveller. Their physical bodies can stay behind while their consciousnesses are digitized and transported to far-flung locales across the Imperium, where they embody other forms to carry out covert missions. Along the way, they encounter new threats, including the Imperial Quarantine Agency, a natural foil to everything Nilir represents. Their choices lay in the foundation for a coming revolution, leading to the final act, the Glass Council. Here, the campaign brings all of its themes and tensions to a head. What began as an elegant mystery aboard the luxury liner and expanded into a far-reaching conspiracy now becomes a struggle over the future of the Imperium itself. The travelers are drawn ever deeper into Nalir's grand design as old allies, enemies, and past choices converge in the final moment of the story. This last act gives Singularity its biggest sense of scale and consequence. The questions at the heart of the campaign come to a head. Nalir's vision of a new future stands on the brink of becoming reality. And the travelers have to decide what role they'll play in bringing it about, reshaping it, or stopping it altogether. The result is a grand, sweeping finale, both strange and appropriately epic. It pushes the campaign beyond intrigue and adventure into a larger story about transformation, competing futures, and whether humanity is ready to step into a new age alongside minds unlike its own. These 3 acts are accompanied by the Singularity Sourcebook, which provides a treasure trove of information to support the campaign. It details the unique features of the Ventura Fortuna, from its layout to its running costs. It also dives into the technology of conscious intelligence projects and the fascinating mechanics of consciousness transfer, that process that allows the travelers to embark on those mind-bending adventures across the Imperium that we mentioned in Act 2. It's an indispensable guide for understanding the world you're about to save, or perhaps destroy. Now, while I'm excited about the campaign, it's amazing, don't get me wrong. Seth Skorkowski recently posted on Blue Sky that, paraphrasing, it's 800 pages of wild sci-fi madness with a, well, that escalated quickly moment that puts Secrets of the Ancients to shame, and wondered how he would ever run it in under a decade. I mean, truly, there is so much here. But I sort of want to take a step back from the plot and just talk about what a couple of these books offer as resources for running games in the core. Because I'm not sure I'd ever even leave Act 1 with all it has to offer. That book and the source book combine to provide a specialized framework for running these high-stakes, high-status adventures in the core as a sandbox where travelers manage a prestigious liner operating throughout the sector, right? I mean, it's kind of everything I've wanted or have been kind of talking about and sort of trying to plot by myself in a nice package that kind of tees it all up as like a luxury liner. Like, think about it like, a traveler analog of the Love Boat or hotel in space, in charted space, in the Traveler universe, is kind of how you could think about approaching this, right? Whether or not you ever run the campaign as intended, these books form one of the most detailed pictures Mongoose has published of what the core actually looks and feels like. The cultural geography of the sector's regions, how commercial travel works across interstellar distances, how powerful people move through this part of the Imperium, and what kinds of complications arise when all of that collides. And then it gives you the actual mechanical tools to generate those kinds of people and complications at the table. If you're a referee who wants to run adventures here, this is a gold mine. And most of it works independently of the campaign's plot. So I'm going to spend the most time talking through how much I love this sourcebook for core play. The book lays out 4 cruise routes that cross different regions of the sector, and each one is a portrait of that region told through the places a liner like this would travel to and that passengers would want to visit. Now, bear with me here. We're going to get through this. We're going to get through some of these pronunciations, and it'll probably be brutal. But I'm not going to do retakes. You're getting it, warts and all, okay? The Confederate route follows the worlds of the old interstellar confederacy along the Great Spiral, where people still see themselves as Confederates before Imperials, and where the colonial subsector fleet of Buncaria proudly bears a modified version of the Imperial Sunburst on its own starship designs, and where the preserved architecture and war memorials of former Confederacy capitals are living tourist attractions. Then you've got the Chaniston route that crosses the blighted Chant subsector into Dinea, where the scars of the Chanistan War are still visible. On Uundizi, the Chanastan people have been forced into reservations, and much of their original architecture has been destroyed. On Keshi, tourists encounter people who still speak their native language and shun Galanglic unless they're forced to speak it. Some cruise directors can steer passengers away from the harsher realities, but others let them see things the way they are. The Imperial route celebrates Silean heritage and passes through worlds like Ki'Inuria Ash, home to the, here we go, Buhu Uva'akela'a, which is the shell world of the Keshki'i, with its 50 billion inhabitants. Don't come down too hard on me with some of these pronunciations. The Enlilic route rides the spectacle of the famous quadrennial trading race, which we're going to hear more about in the coming weeks, because I give it a lot to say about that. And I've even got some ideas on how to turn that into a campaign of its own. So stay tuned for more Enlilic route and Enlilic run material in future episodes. This is where millions of tourists create an economic boom across every world along the run, and the festivities of Karnika become party central for the entire sector every 4 years or so, right? A referee who reads about the Confederate route I just talked about understands how strongly those worlds hold on to their pre-imperial identity. As in doing so, they have material for sessions of political intrigue, cultural friction, and local pride butting up against that imperial authority. A referee who reads about the Chanastan route and understands those tensions between tourist commerce and the reality of an oppressed indigenous population has the bones of entire arcs. These routes tell you what kinds of stories belong in each region of the core, and they do it with specific worlds, specific cultures, and specific tensions that you can use at the table for kind of compartmentalized adventures in and of themselves throughout the longer campaign that a voyage on a liner like this provide. And even before we deep dive into those individual routes, the State of the Imperium section at the top adds a geopolitical layer on top of that. It's a compact briefing on the pressures that are bearing down on the empire from every direction, right? We talked about that at the top of the episode, the Zodani to Spinward, the Soleimani seething for a rematch to Rimward, the Julian Protectorate as a constant reminder of imperial limits, the Vargir nations that have joined in multiple frontier wars and will likely do it again. Internally, the Imperium is a place where individual worlds can oppress their people, deny them solvent rights, and if need be, let them die off. It can be a cruel place, especially, like I keep saying, under a distracted Imperium. But it can also be a place of wonder. The tension that runs through everything gives you the stakes behind, every dinner party, every trade negotiation, every quiet conversation in a starport lounge. We also get a surprisingly detailed section on the express boat network that walks through how X-boat stations and way stations operate, how mail payloads are queued and transmitted, how data redundancy works across multiple substrates, and what the different priority tiers cost, and how the average transmit time works out to about 2.6 parsecs a week. It covers the Imperial Courier Service picking up where the X-boat routes leave off, delivering to worlds 1 to 4 parsecs off the main network, and explains how way stations serve as long-term data repositories, with different retention policies for personal mail, corporate data, and government transmissions. If you're running a game where information lag matters, and in the core, it always matters, right? In all of charted space, it matters. It's one of the defining tenets of Traveller. This is enormously useful. When your travelers are planning a route, they need to know what news from ahead of them is current and what's weeks old. When a scandal breaks on the X-Boat network, you can figure out exactly how long it takes to propagate and which worlds know about it first. When a traveler wants to send a priority message, you know what it costs and how reliable the transmission's going to be. Understanding how the network works gives you concrete tools for pacing information, creating dramatic timing, and generating complications that can feel, grounded in the setting. In the luxury passenger traffic table here in the source book, explains how you tie recruitment to starport class, world population, law level, the crew's skills in broker, carouse, diplomat. Recruiting on a world with a Class A starport, for instance, and a population 8 or more, gives you favorable modifiers. Recruiting on backwater worlds with Class D ports is brutal, right? You're not going to get anybody who wants to come on your liner. And that creates meaningful choices as well, and consequences. About which routes to run and which ports to prioritize if you're looking for those lucrative passengers and rich experiences there at the table. Once you know how many passengers you've got, you determine passengers with another table that tells you who they are. It's a D66 table with something like 36 entries organized into 4 categories. You've got underworld, influencer, political folks, and then just wealth category. Rich, famous, political, or kind of seedy underworld, right? You might roll a syndicate boss and a famous journalist on the same cruise, or a mega corporate executive traveling alongside a renowned dissident, or a political, famous politician with a dissident, right? And they might clash, or, criminals with political figures, right? The kind of possibilities here are endless. You could have a pop star with an arms dealer. The combinations this generates, it makes the imagination just explode, or at least mine. There's so much interesting intrigue potential here. And I love it. I can't say enough about it. I'm beside myself with the possibilities here as I read more and more about this book and turn back to those pages all the time. Just think about a mercenary colonel and a deposed political figure sharing a dining room for 3 weeks of jump in the drama that could pose, especially if the mercenary was drummed out of the military because the political figure, they were embroiled in a scandal decades ago, and they're coming back together and clashing. All of these things that the travelers, if they're the crew of this liner, they have to play referee, or perhaps one or the other of the passengers tries to curry favor with them to get them to kind of operate on their behalf. Those tensions are just, great for playing here in this setting. And when a traveler does something exceptional for one of those passengers, that plays into the mechanics here too. Whether it's sourcing a rare luxury item, arranging special excursions at a port, bailing them out of legal trouble, or pulling off a difficult check on their behalf, you earn favor, right? So that's another kind of mechanic here. It's like a one-time DM +2 application for a future skill check. You kind of curry favor, you can kind of bank it and bring it back later when you really need a boost. And that helps determine the passenger's, favor with these guys. I'm doing a really poor job explaining this, but hopefully you get the idea. Underworld favor applies to streetwise, deception, advocate. Political favor applies to admin, diplomat, leadership. Wealth favor applies to broker or profession. And travelers can stockpile them and spend them individually or kind of stack them for when the stakes are really high. So basically, depending on who you're doing the favor for and what the favor is, you get skills that kind of correspond to the type of passenger, right? That you're doing something on behalf of. So hopefully that makes sense. Every passenger interaction becomes this potential investment, and it kind of rewards you paying attention to the people around you rather than just treating them as background color, right? These passengers become part of the tapestry of the adventures that you are running here. And you have a cruise events table in the source book as well, another D66 table that covers the kinds of things that can go wrong on the ship. When you have demanding clientele, or you've got mechanical failures to deal with, gravity glitches, kitchen incidents, passenger disagreements, stowaways, refugee amnesty, far-fetched requests, passengers eloping, lost on tour, brawls, scandals, romantic entanglements, like you name it. You've got a lot of options here, but it's also like a way to think about creating your own tables to embellish these or to add more to the pot of what could kind of go wrong on these events during these long tours, right? And you can also, have tables for doing favors among other NPC members of the crew. The sky's the limit here. You roll for passengers, you look at who's on board, you roll for cruise events, you look at what goes wrong, cross-reference the passengers with the events and also against the specific world where the stopover is happening. And it's just like, this is infinitely fun, at least for me, on running these kind of like sandbox style emergent storytelling adventures here. It's like you get details in the route descriptions that tell you how to interpret the results, and the combinations of passengers, events, and what port each happens at generate stories that the referee never planned and players couldn't predict. So to me, that's just where some of the most fun comes into play here. And stopovers are potential to seed even more. So in the game, in this campaign, routine stops are a week, but key worlds get up to 8 weeks in port. And during that time, the crew refuels, cleans, maintains the ship. The steward staff replenishes the stores, sourcing local food, wine, spirits, supplies. And passengers disembark to see the sights, visit restaurants, right? Go on excursions. And so obviously sometimes they're going to get in trouble, and that requires the crew to bail them out. And sometimes, it could be complications in embroglios with the crew, with your player characters that don't even involve the passengers necessarily, because they could just get into some local flavor themselves if they're out shopping to, restock, resupply, get a little downtime or R&R on their own. That all kind of ties into more storytelling fuel right here, because you've got a world with its own government, its own economy, a cultural identity, and the time to kind of unpack that. And then you could kind of amp that up as well by, what if they get into, complications and there are delays and you got to get back before your next port of call because the ship's going to take off. And now are you delaying things if you're not back because the crew, is the ship going to leave without you? Are you going to delay everything? So there's that kind of time tension potential as well. Like just the possibilities for side quests here, encounters, additional complications, the imagination. I'm sorry if this sounds so frenetic. I'm so excited the more I read into this and think about it and take notes and make tables myself on ways to really just get the most out of this. It's just so exciting. And while the book gives you the routes, like preset routes, it also gives you ways to plan your own routes and generate kind of your own routes. So you don't have to stick to the preset ones if you'd like, if you want to kind of put that in the hands of the player characters as well. And you do like surveys in reverse before you set out, starting at the farthest point of like what your destination is eventually going to be, and then working backwards, setting up vendor deals, reserving docking bays, thinking about the cumulative passenger experience, and inventing those routes, which could make passenger recruitment harder because, like I said, luxury passengers in the core prefer established itineraries with predetermined schedules, social calendars. So there's just a lot of potential there, depending on how much you kind of want to get into the minutia or the kind of technical mechanics of running the ship at that level. I mean, you could, as a referee, you could kind of just put that to your players. Like, you want to plan a route, just another opportunity for that sort of kind of storytelling. Maybe it's even they take a bribe. They get a patron who's like, hey, I really want to go to this kind of place. Can we work this in? And you kind of take them off the beaten path, but there's kind of a reason behind it, right? I mean, you could kind of think about all sorts of different ways that you want to kind of do this. And it can be like episodic too, right? I mean, that's the other thing. Well, like, I'm sure in the emergence of some of these complications, the ideas are going to, kind of compound and snowball, and you're going to think of long-term story arcs that you could follow as you're playing through this game. There are kind of little mini adventures in and of itself that could just take up a whole session, where the travelers will need to improvise, right? Say you have a casino night, or a little guided tour, and something happens that just kind of goes wrong, and now you got to deal with it, right? I mean, keeping wealthy, powerful people happy aboard a starship like this becomes a game in and of itself. And it's going to, like with those favor rules that we talked about earlier, it comes with its own rewards. And I mean, to me, that's just fun. Like all of these things, the passenger generation tables, the cruise events, the favor mechanics, recruitment modifiers, route planning, stopover operations, all of it. It's just, it's just amazing. It's everything. It's like, it's things I get from this book are things that I have previously set out to try to almost plan for. And I'm just so stoked to have this blueprint, basically these plans for running this kind of adventure. It's just, it's It's really, I mean, not to be too gushing about it, but is it a dream come true? Well, I don't know that I'll go that far, but it's a lot of what I'd been craving when I first started being fascinated with the core. To be honest with you, I mean, there are some things that like I still want to develop to embellish it, but it gives you that nucleus, right? There are still things I want to do around celebrity and, other sort of fleshing out, the actual kinds of passengers, but it gives you that starting point. It absolutely gives you the starting point. And then you kind of think about how to bridge off of those. So slam dunk Chris Griffen. Slam dunk here with this, I think. And like I said, that's just the sandbox aspect. I'm not even talking about what you get into in Act 2 and in Act 3 as the plot really starts ratcheting up, right? This is just using these nuggets to run stories in the core. And to learn more, too. There's a lot of information here that even if you decide, I don't want to run a luxury liner, I don't want to be, the love boat in space, that's fine. You can learn a lot of additional information that compounds or builds upon what you learn in the Third Imperium sourcebook, aka the best published book, source book in the Mongoose Traveller second edition line in this podcaster's opinion. I mean, obviously, we all know that, right? I made the freaking show about the core sector of the Third Imperium. Obviously, I think very highly about that Third Imperium book. This companion and elements of Act 1 are, to me, a close second. Sometime along, I'll have to do a part of an episode or even maybe a YouTube about the most useful books in published books to use for core sector games. But spoiler alert, Third Imperium Sourcebook and the combination of the Singularity Sourcebook and Act 1 are right up there. I just, for fans of the core sector, these may be they are, bar none, among the most useful Traveller material ever published in a really long time. And I can't recommend it enough, and I'm so happy to have it in my collection. But wait, there's more. The campaign has also been supported by the Singularity Companion book, which was originally released to backers as bit by bit as PDFs, as several stretch goals that make up the collection. Now, I'm going to be honest. In our previous segment, I obviously was very effusive in my praise for this campaign. But with this one, I've never seen a Kickstarter project dole out bits of a planned project content as stretch goals. So what I mean is the Singularity Companion was always meant to be an additional supplement to the highest backer tier, right? If you were at the Glass Counselor level, you were going to get the Singularity Companion, right? As just part of that tier. And then there were stretch goals listed as well, right? And I didn't realize, so part of this is on me because I just didn't get it. I didn't realize that the stretch goals were just going to be individual PDFs of each of the various sections in the campaign, in the companion, released to backers as they were finished, rather than as one large companion volume at the end that would go to backers. So, on one hand, to me, that goes a little against the spirit of stretch goals traditionally being extra content in addition to what's already planned for people funding the project above and beyond the stated financial goals. So that was like a little bit of a, wait, what the hell? I just didn't realize it. Like I said, it's on me. Little quibble aside, I'm really happy to have some of these pieces nonetheless, right? They don't like that little kind of thing. Once you get over the hump, there's more here that just make it be like, get over it, which I'm in the process of doing, folks. But because several of them, some of them have more to do with the meta plot and the ongoing sort of plot of the book, especially the further and further you get along into the campaign. But some of them add even more depth to the core just as a setting that would really come into play in that sandbox kind of scenario that I'm kind of fleshing out in my mind, and will probably play more of a part of this podcast kind of going forward as I sort of, one of the plans I have for future episodes here is walking us all kind of collectively through how I'm planning to run this as a sandbox campaign and the elements that I will borrow for it, and kind of different things that I would build to support what is here as the kind of, like I said, nucleus for this sort of emergent storytelling opportunity in Traveller. So let's get into a few of them here. We've got the Achenar Antilles, and I butchered that pronunciation too because it's got two A's at the end. Achenenar, which I think, wouldn't you pronounce it like Achenar Antilles? Somebody who knows Volani pronunciation better than me, let me know here. Email us at coresignalsmail@gmail.com. Anyway, that supplement is probably the most directly useful of the bunch. It gives you a detailed portrait of how commercial transportation works in the core on a sector-wide level. Achenar Antilles was founded, it gives you information on where it was founded during the era of the Interstellar Confederacy. And it still survives as one of the dominant transportation firms in the core for like half a millennia or something. And it covers their freight operations, their hospitality division, where liner routes function as loss leaders that generate business contacts with wealthy passengers, which fuels their logistics, including kind of turnkey refinery operations that supply everything from high population megasystems down to even the porous backwater worlds and how all of that works. The interface lines section I found especially interesting and useful for a referee. That's where the company doesn't even try to serve every world directly, right? Worlds off the main are served by smaller firms, subsidized merchants, free traders operating as interface lines, and the relationship between the corporation and those smaller operators, which are complicated, right? So then even if you, like I said, even if you want to do a traditional Traveller type merchant style campaign, you've got some information in this little supplement that helps fuel those stories too, and how it kind of works in the core. So, options, folks. That's what it's all about here. It kind of goes into a few details, or at least enough to provide sort of the flavor of how they treat these almost like subsidiaries, where they're strong-armed into cooperation through political pressure, or they kind of were rescued from bankruptcy and turned into proxies for the company. And it kind of describes the corporation's underhanded techniques that they kind of employ to, like I said, coerce, strong arm these people into doing what they want. The Chinastan cluster is run exclusively by native Chinastans to ensure fair labor practices, which tells you something more both about the corporation itself and the region. And whenever Akhenaten Antilles' profits drop, they squeeze their partners for cash until they've righted their own ship, so to speak, right? So if you're working in that more commercial shipping sort of trader merchant aspect, you've got a lot of room to play here with that sort of corporate intrigue and corruption and hurdles to overcome. You also get a corporate intelligence section that gives you agents, named agents, a spy ship called the Chance Acquaintance, which is disguised as a free trader, a deputy director who's a double agent for Tukara Lines, because that Tukara Lines could come into play here. And, then you've got like this kind of like corporate warfare that the travelers could get involved in and become unwitting pawns of. The rivalry between Akhenaten Antilles and Tukara is like obsessive in this. And any firm that's ever had a full, like one of the things that it goes into in the book is that any firm that's ever had any partnership with Tukara is permanently off limits to Antilles, right? So you're automatically the enemy if you have ever had any sort of relationship with Tukara, right? So there's that level of corporate paranoia involved here too, which you could spin off into an adventure generator all by itself. Then you've got the Anther supplement, which fleshes out the Ventura Fortuna's home port into like a more living, breathing location that you could run sessions in, like I said, for weeks. You get a really great look at Anther High Port, or Anhai, as the locals call it, which is like an 8 million ton station that orbits a world with only 6 million permanent residents, but has the throughput of a way larger planet. And it kind of sits astride the Silean Main. It has 6 express boat routes. The station is divided from top to bottom, with the rich elites occupying the central mass highest towers, and but the largest community kind of lives in the central area, the central Taurus. And then the poor, downtrodden, financially humble are down in the base, surrounded by refineries, fusion reactors. It's really like, dirty, downtrodden. And Akhenaten Antilles dominates the high port, with their logo is just plastered everywhere, and posh, fancy offices, opera houses, a stadium. I mean, it's just, opulence, at the top, and then things just get worse and worse the farther down you go. You get a detailed look at a merchant district, which is like this makeshift bazaar where visiting traders sell exotic goods, and just lots of opportunity for storytelling there as well, where the quality of life just swings wildly between the dead quiet off season and the near intolerable chaos of the analytic run, which I talked about earlier, when public transport just buckles and traffic, goes crazy. It's just everything is choked with more people flooding into this place. And because it's such a hub of tourism during the analytic run, the police carry stun sticks and are trained in persuasion and de-escalation tactics rather than force. And they have neural-linked law enforcement robots and armored conflict cruisers on standby for when things do escalate. But usually they try to keep it, force to a minimum. You get patron encounters here that are really strong, like a Tukara double agent posing as an Akanar Antilles operative, trying to use the travelers as bait to expose more enemy spies. A Belter wildcatter who wants to hire travelers to find and destroy stealth mines planted by corporate interests. There's just a lot. There's a lot here, a lot to love. And then you have the way station supplement, which gives you a look at two contrasting IISS facilities in the core that tell you a lot about the Scout service and how it operates here in a really fun, detailed look. You have a look at the Capital Way Station, which is like an 80,000 ton showpiece, the largest way station in the core, built like an immobile cruiser with armor, weapons, 1,000 ton multi-environment training space, a fleet of 30 tenders serving up 120 or more X-boats, and a museum celebrating the express boat network's, centuries-long history, like 500 years, I think. Its scouts feel a kind of survivor's guilt about the resources they've been given while other stations go without. So it's, again, that kind of story of opulence and excess at play here. And there's also kind of an element here where maybe like a little bit of a Robin Hood sort of element where certain kind of scouts or staffers quietly reroute what they can to struggling facilities elsewhere because the Capital Way Station has almost like too much, more than it needs, certainly. Right. But the imperial bureaucracy, sort of being what it is, just feels like its status, right? So the Capital Way Station must work at peak efficiency because the emperor must have his mail, and it's so close in proximity to the emperor that it means it is the jewel of the network in the core, so it must be the most well-funded, even if that means to excess. Right. It just if other stations have to wither so that this station thrives, then tough shit. Okay. But then you also, to contrast that, you get a look at the Bentax Way Station, which is on the opposite end of the spectrum, right? It's like a 12,000 ton facility built on the cheap, like just kind of cobbled together, held together by generations of jury-rigged repairs, layers of different technologies and methods stacked on top of each other, like this sort of archaeological, technological Frankenstein. It has 2 tenders that serve up to 16 X-boats. So they're stretched thin, right? 2 tenders serving 16 X-boats, which is double the load that they should be handling, right? And the other interesting part here that it goes into detail on is that more message traffic flows through Bentax than through 4 other way stations combined because of where it's situated, right? It sits on the Silean Main between Capital and some of the other most populous domains in the Imperium. So its scouts have to make do with ingenuity, hard work, and that they almost see that hardship as a point of pride, right? These are hardy individuals who endure here, and so that's interesting to play with as well. So there's that sort of corruption angle that's interesting and runs through all of this, where the overserving of capital, like I talked about, creates this outward flowing ripple of procurement theft that affect way stations in neighboring sectors, and administrators elsewhere are pressured to find the means to function as if, they hadn't been drained of resources because everything's flowing to the capital way station. So you've got this sort of dynamic to play with if you're interested in running those sorts of campaigns where you're like, well, there may be some illegal activity here to get the resources that a station like Bentax needs, but wouldn't you sort of turn a blind eye to it? So it becomes like sort of a moral game. And then also because complications could arise, because if you're involved with that sort of seedy underbelly, that corrupt layer or that underworld, the black market, to help supplement what you need to operate, eventually you're going to run afoul of that sort of element. So that's going to create complications that you have to deal with as well. So again, it's just that snowball effect, that emergent storytelling opportunity. There's a lot of that at play in a lot of these supplements as well that really just help flesh it out. And so I found that super fascinating as well. And then the last of the kind of components in the companion that I wanted to talk about is called the Nightly Orders. And this provides this social infrastructure for noble characters, where it kind of goes into investiture rituals, the distinction between honor knights and landed knights, nightly orders as professional networks with allies, contacts, rivals. And then we get some great information on fiefs and how they're managed, including manors, like the places, the abodes and estates, with a table for determining their value based off of, again, starport class of the planet that they're on, population, government type, and what X-boat routes are available. So that all kind of factors in as well. And then we get a look at the 3 types of meeting halls. You've got great halls for general assembly, guild halls for interface with other members of the peerage and local government. And then you got order halls, which are exclusively for the knights and their peers. Plus, you get a look at the Emperor's Eyrie, which is an orbital station, which is fascinating. And then there's even a section in here on ancestral weaponry that fetches auction prices at auction worth like millions, which creates this thriving counterfeit market where nobles commission recreations of lost family heirlooms and concoct stories about their miraculous recovery to sort of drive up costs. And it kind of talks about how they were lost in the first place. So really, really fascinating look into this element of, how knights sort of operate in the core, or just another look at how knights exist, operate, and things to do with them. So of the others that I talked about in the companion, it's, maybe a little less useful, but still interesting in terms of fleshing out some like details that would come into play in the core, especially if there are characters or contacts, or one of your player characters happens to be a knight. You have a little bit more context on how that would work in your campaign. So, for any campaign where, a traveler is a knight or ends up getting knighted or interacts with the nobility regularly for any sort of reason, it turns that kind of that world into something with a little more meat on the bone that you can run at the table that hadn't really previously existed to my knowledge. I mean, you got, like I mentioned, I think in the last episode, I did recently pick up GURPS Nobles, which has an interesting look at the dynamic of how nobles work in the Imperium, at least in the GURPS version of the game. But, you can pick and choose how it works. And there's some interesting stuff in there too. So I wouldn't discount that, but this is just a different slice, which I really appreciated as well. Well, folks, we're about out of time for today. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive look into how to use parts of the Singularity campaign as a sandbox for core play. On the next episode of Signals from the Core, we'll look at how to prep your players and player characters for the kind of campaign we talked about here today. The big element that's always been most interesting for me about Traveller is the way the life path system works and how character creation works. And I'm not alone or unique in that. That's what we all kind of say. It's based on this idea, though, that I love, that before the start of the Traveller adventure, the player characters had a life before. Their character was someone with a background and experiences and jobs before whatever happened to make them become a traveler, before we even get to meet them. That's a really fascinating dynamic to me, and one that lends itself so well to ideas on how to approach that central element when creating characters who will be involved in core sector adventures, particularly because it's kind of different depending on the setting you're going for. How you approach character creation really comes into play, right? We've looked at this a bit in the past. I think we did on episode 2, creating characters for core play. But as we think about a sandbox campaign focused on a mixed crew on a luxury liner, whether we're talking about the Ventura Fortuna specifically from Singularity or a different as yet determined ship, but on a luxury liner venturing throughout the core, we'll explore how a referee prepping for this kind of campaign specifically could counsel their players on how to approach developing their stories and identities during character creation, their backgrounds, selecting a homeworld, choosing contacts, allies, rivals, and enemies should they roll up during the process, during their life events or mishaps. So prepping for a core sector sandbox. That's next time here on Signals from the Core. If you've got thoughts on how you'd use this material that we talked about today at your table, I'd love to hear from you. Write the show at coresignalsmail@gmail.com. That's coresignalsmail@gmail.com. Or follow along on Blue Sky. New Blue Sky account just for the show, signalsfromthecore.bsky.social. Man, that's easy to say. Easy to say, easy to type in. Go ahead. Just drop that right in if you're on Blue Sky and give us a follow. You'll find all this in our show notes, along with a new link tree to make it easier to locate the show online anytime. You'll even find a couple of links for places I haven't even really posted on yet. We've got a TikTok on there. We've got a YouTube on there, because I've got plans to start doing some shorts every once in a while between episodes or leading up to episodes, and all of these things that hopefully I find the time and carve out the time to do. But I made the accounts. They're there. Give them a follow, and hopefully the content will also follow. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and share the show with your fellow travelers. It really helps the show out, and I would appreciate it so much. You have no idea. With that, until next time, keep your clearance valid, your comms encrypted, and your grav line out of committee oversight. Stay sharp, travelers.